All right, Danny, how's everything, man?
Everything is good, brother. Everything is good.
Good. So you're currently not residing in California anymore. Is that correct?
That is correct. I now live in Texas, in the
Hey,
great state of Texas.
lucky you, man. One of these days I'm gonna make that jump, but till now I guess I'm kind of rooted or grounded here.
Yeah, no problem. I understand. I still love California. I go back quite often,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm from. I was born and raised there, and in Whittier, California.
What year were you born? If you don't mind me asking you.
I was born in 1957. Imagine you're living in the city of Whittier, right?
Yeah.
Which was an old Quaker town back in the day. It's about 35, 40 minutes, maybe 40. Yeah, 40 minutes from Hollywood.
Right.
Okay. And then you grow up and you want to be an actor. And there Hollywood is, and practically in your freaking backyard.
Yep.
I mean, what could be more perfect? Other people, maybe they come from Kansas or Iowa or God knows where. They got to fly there. They got to drive there. They got to get a place to live there while they're, pursuing this career. But for me, I was just born right there.
Now I know you
Further
mentioned. Oh, go
further
ahead.
east, further east of East LA. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
East LA, but further east of East LA.
Whittier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After you go through East LA, then you go through Montebello and you go through Pico Rivera and then you come to Whittier. All down Whittier Boulevard.
You're bringing it back with all those cities, man. Pico
Yeah.
Rivera. So you mentioned you wanted to be an actor. Like, was that something you had always aspired to be by watching television, or did it just dawn on you one day?
Well, when I was in kindergarten, I was in a play, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I think I was one of the dwarfs.
Okay.
I know it wasn't Snow White, but you're 5 years old. And then when I was in junior high, maybe I was 11 or 12, 12 or 13, I was in another play. And then by the time I got to my freshman year of high school, that was when I decided to join the theater drama department and get involved in being in plays.
Nice. So you're
So
doing
ever
oh,
since I was young, it's been a part of my life.
excellent. So you're doing these plays in going through school, but at some point you're gonna need to make connections to the people in Hollywood and bridge that gap. How did that come about?
Before you make connections to the people in Hollywood, you have to make other connections. You have to make connections with people who are in plays, in
Mm.
theater departments, in other high schools. And then you make connections to people who are doing plays that aren't in high school, like let's say community theater or civic light operas. And you're making connections with people outside the realm of high school, or you're still doing theater. Like, let's say the summer comes around, and now I'm not in school anymore, so I've got the summer off. I'm still doing plays. I would find organizations that put plays on, and I would join them and make more connections. So the connections that I made when I was in high school, you know, pursuing my love of acting, I just continued to make those same kinds of connections as I progressed and went up the ladder.
Yeah, excellent. You're an easy person to talk to, so I can see how those relationships would be easy to build. You know, you're down to earth and easygoing. Um, were you passionate about acting and coming out in
You
plays and
know,
doing stuff like that?
there's an old saying, "Get in where you fit in," right? When I was in high school, when I got to high school my freshman year, my brother, who's 10 years older than me, okay, he had, graduated, 10 years prior, right? To my 9 years prior to my joining high school. And so he was an athlete, okay? And my brother was a really exceptional athlete. He played baseball, he played football. His name was it up in the gym holding certain records
Wow,
at the high school. So my name, the De La Paz name, was known at that high school because of my brother. He had
nice.
he had built that name from scratch. So when I got there, I was known as my brother's name was Oscar, right? But they called him Sonny. I was known as Oscar de la Paz's brother. And all the coaches and the people at the school would say, "Hey, are you related to Oscar?" And this is, years after he graduated. All right. So right away, I could see the impact that my brother had made at that high school, right?
Yeah.
So, but you want to be your own person and you want to go and travel your own road. So, my passion wasn't in sports, mine was in the arts, in being creative, and acting was the outlet that I chose. So, I decided to make a name for myself and not just be known as my brother's brother. And that's pretty much what I did. In that high school, in the 4 years that I was there, from my freshman through my senior year, I was in every single play that school did, plays, dramas, and musicals. In the 4 years that I was there, every single one. And let me tell you, back in those days, in the 70s, they used to spend money on those plays. We had a budget. We had makeup, we had sets, we had costumes, we had a beautiful theater to perform in. I mean, we used to have a lot available to us as young people back in the day that they don't spend money on that stuff now for kids. They
Facts.
really don't.
Facts. Yeah, we'll dive into the current state. That's something I really want to get into, and I know you have your beliefs, and they're pretty similar to mine. And you said mentioned the '70s, right? I was trying to put together the time frame, the years, the '70s. So, what was going on? The Vietnam War. How were the streets on LA at that time?
This okay. I got to high school in the fall of 1971, in September of 71, and I finished up in the summer of 75. So the Vietnam War was going that entire time. And of course, I'm 17, 18 in my senior year. And I'm thinking that, there's a possibility I might get drafted and off to war I'll have to go.
Yeah,
And I couldn't imagine a worse nightmare than that. But as it turned out, the war ended during that time when I was a senior. And so I didn't wind up having to go. My brothers, my two older brothers before me, one had been in the Air Force and the other in the Army. And my brother that I mentioned, the athlete, wound up going to Vietnam.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and so did all of his buddies. But
Did
they,
do you
they didn't
remember?
come back the same people that they went, though. They came back different people in a way. They were changed forever by that experience.
I was just about to ask you that, man. And unfortunately, I was in the Iraq War, and my family definitely can know that I did not come back the same person that I left.
There's no way you can. When you experience trauma like that, it changes you forever.
Facts, facts. How about the streets? Was gangs big at that time?
Growing up in Whittier, okay, I grew up as a kid in the 60s in Whittier. I didn't know anything about gangs. I never heard of gangs. I never saw gangs. Um, I never had anybody ask me where I was from, or well, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up with people that were involved in that lifestyle. Whittier was a mix of Mexican Americans and Anglos, and everybody got along great. But my childhood, people want to know what my childhood was really like. It was like Kevin in the Wonder Years.
Oh, that's
If
awesome.
remember that series from the 80s?
Absolutely.
That was my childhood. The Schwinn bicycles, the transistor radios. That was the good part of it. The kind of darker part of it was the fact that the Vietnam War was looming over everything. I used to watch it on TV back when I was a kid because they were televising on the news, which they don't do now.
Correct.
But back then they did that. And the other thing was my father was an alcoholic.
Mm.
So that brought a lot of darkness into my, idyllic childhood. From the time I was very, very young, I remember my father's drinking, and all the problems that it created within the family. But as far as growing up is concerned in the streets, I didn't know the streets like people know the streets.
Right.
I didn't wasn't even aware that there were gangs in at that time. I think in the early 70s, maybe that was the gang probably wasn't so big in Whittier.
Yeah.
And it would have been more in South Whittier, and I lived in Uptown Whittier. Anywhere like north of Lambert Boulevard would be considered Uptown Whittier.
Right. Right. Man, it sounds like a lot. A lot going on. The Wonder Years. That's a great show, but I can totally relate when you said that your father was an alcoholic. I myself am an alcoholic, and I'm actually
Yes.
tomorrow I'll have 13 years of sobriety, and
God bless you for that, man.
thank you.
My father could never achieve that as many times as he tried to clean up and, would go through rehab and all these various things. He was never able to conquer
Yeah,
that beast.
it's very
The
real. It is
beast.
very real. It is.
It's
Um,
a beast.
definitely. What what was your first major big break into Hollywood that I know you had mentioned, like where you made those relationships and now, hey, you're walking through these gates, or what do they look like, or your
Well,
what?
remember how I told you I would do a lot of plays, right? Then the
Right.
summer would come and I would find organizations like the Parks and Recreation would put on plays in the summertime. They
Yeah.
had an organization where you could try out, and so all of us would go and audition, and we'd be from different high schools, and we'd all be in these productions in the summertime. Anyway, before a play was even finished, okay, before I was even done with a play, before we were finished with all the performances, I'd already be looking for another one,
Ooh.
and I would find them. Okay, so I would just go from play to play to play to play, like just like play hopping. So after I graduated from high school, I went and looked at these business trade papers, okay, that would come out. And these papers dealt with the profession of acting, and they listed all the auditions that were happening in the Los Angeles area, okay? Some of them were professional for people who were in the unions, and some of them were non union jobs or people who had not been able to join the union yet. And I got myself into a production of a children's musical, okay? And it paid like $2.75 an hour, right? It's like getting a job, but it was doing what I love to do.
Oh,
So I
nice.
took the job. Okay. So now I'm getting paid. Anyway, I'm in this children's musical. And one day after a performance, okay, of this show, this musical show for kids, somebody comes and to the dressing room in the backstage and gives me a note and says that somebody in the audience left this note for me.
Ooh.
So I read the note, and the note says, my name is Damon Evans, and I think you should give this man a call. His name is so and so, and he's an agent. All right, Damon Evans, okay, at that time, this is 1976, was on a television show that was a huge hit, okay? It was called The Jeffersons, and he was playing Lionel, the oldest son on the Jeffersons. He wasn't the original Lionel. Somebody played him for the first season or two seasons and then left the show. And Damon took over from the first person that played that character. But he was starring in a hit television show. And I didn't even know he was in the audience. I've never met this man, and I've never met him to this day. But he left me that note and told me to call this man who was a theatrical agent. An agent is somebody who represents actors for television and film roles. You have to have an agent in order to get television and film roles.
Right.
So I called this man up, told him that I was recommended by his client. Damon was his client. And this man arranged a meeting, between the two of us. I went to go meet with him at his office. I was 19 years old. He took a look at me. We talked for a while, and I guess in his mind, he decided, maybe I can, you know, start sending this kid out, and we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah.
So, boom, I got an agent, and the next thing you know, he sends me out. The first audition he sends me on, bingo, I nailed it, and I got my first part on a television series. It wasn't a recurring role. It was just a one-time part, but it was a nice part. I wasn't like an extra. I had lines. I was like a supporting player on this one television show. It was the very first Latino television show in the history of television.
Wow.
Okay. Even you won't be able to tell me the name of it. It didn't last very long. It was called Poppy, P
Poppy.
O P I.
Okay.
It's like a New Yorican term for father, Poppy,
Yeah.
like Papa. And it was based on a movie from the late 60s that
Okay.
starred Alan Arkin as a Puerto Rican father, a widower with two sons, two young sons. And the next thing you know, I'm on the set at MGM Studios. I'm 19 years old and I'm pinching myself saying, wow, I can't believe this. I'm nervous as hell because I've never been in front of a camera. I don't know anything about acting techniques for film, nothing about it. All I know is I've been in a gazillion plays in the past 4.5 years since I was 14. And that now I'm on the lot at MGM and shooting this television show. And that's how it all started pretty much.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing because people try to correlate, oh, hey, this person is lucky. They just have good luck. No, but basically what I gathered is your hard work ethic.
You
You
make your luck. You
correct.
create your own luck. You're like a magnet. If you want something bad enough and you're passionate about it and you have that total passion for it, you just draw it to you like a magnet. Like a magnet. It's the same thing with like my father's alcoholism, let's
Right.
say, okay? Or yours, for
Facts.
example. You get into that zone where drinking is what you do. You are a drinker. You are an alcoholic, and that energy that you create in that space draws all these experiences to you. All this darkness comes your way because you are inviting it in.
Facts. You
But
know,
it doesn't have to be darkness that you invite in. You can invite the light in too.
and that's kind of where I'm at now. You know, when I was drinking, I used to say, you could have put me on an island with no money, no nothing, and I would have wound up drunk. You know, that's just kind of
Yes,
I would have figured it out.
that's but that just goes to show you the power of each one of us has so much power to create our reality is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Right.
And that power it's unbelievable what people can do if they put their minds and their hearts to it. It's only the fact that we don't believe in ourselves enough that makes it difficult or challenging for us to get things that we want out of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Talk to me about how the role for the movie American Me came to you and how did that play out?
Well, after I got that television role, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I kept going up for parts. The agent started submitting me, and I didn't get anything. And then a couple years went by, 2 years, okay? And boom, I got a small role in a television movie. And then I got another small role in a television series, an after school special, okay? And then he called me up one day. Now, by this time, because 2 years had gone by, I had to get a job. Since my father was a carpenter,
Okay.
the only environment I felt comfortable in as far as job wise was concerned was a lumber yard because I grew up with wood and hammers and nails and saws and sawdust and all of that. I was comfortable around all that. So I got a part time job at a lumber yard. And I was working at the lumber yard one day, and my agent called me at work. We didn't have cell phones back then in 1978. And he told me, hey, I'm setting you up for this role in this project that's about gangs,
Oof.
Mexican street gangs. And I was like, gangs? Like I wasn't really sure what that was. Like Mexican gangs. Like I didn't really know what that was, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Anyway, the film was called King Cobra. So I went to the audition and then I got called back, you know? So for about the next 4 months, 4 or 5 months, I think it was, I would keep getting called back, called back, called back while they were trying to make up their minds about this King Cobra movie. Eventually, in the summer of 1978, I got a call. I think it was June, and the agent said, "You know what? They finally decided to go with you. You got the role. It was the lead role." And of course, King Cobra came to have its title changed and was renamed Boulevard Nights. The
Nice.
Cobra's still in there though. When you see Chico getting his tattoo,
Yeah.
this is a long way of telling you, okay, in answer to your question about American Me, how I got the role. Once I got that role in Boulevard Nights, okay, and I did the film and the film came out and people saw my performance, it introduced me to the entire industry, to the movie industry. It was my introduction to the movie industry.
Nice.
And all of a sudden, I was on everybody's radars. Who is this kid with this lead role in this movie that was produced by the guy that produced Taxi Driver?
Wow.
you know, and all these great films. The Sting,
Yeah.
okay, Tony Bill, he produced Boulevard Nights, and he had
Wow.
produced those two films as well as many others.
Yeah.
He went on to become a director as well. He directed My Bodyguard with Adam Baldwin, who was the star of Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket.
Mm.
But anyway, not to digress, but it was because of my being in that movie that Edward James Olmos, who was doing Zoot Suit at the time on stage, okay, in Los Angeles, saw Boulevard Nights, okay, and put me on his radar.
Wow.
And at that time, he was trying to shop around the script of American Me to see if he could raise the money or find a studio who would be willing to invest in doing it. But he wasn't a big enough star yet. And he wasn't able to get anybody interested in American Me. That script to American Me had been around since 1974, I believe it was.
Wow.
Yeah, it goes back a long, long time. It was 18 years between the time I first heard about that script and the time when we actually walked onto the set to make the movie. So if we had done it when he originally had wanted to do it, I probably would have played Little Puppet because I would have been the right age.
Oh
But
yeah.
because all those years went by and nothing ever happened, then eventually, 13, it was 13 years, I think. No, it was 18 years, I think, that went by. They tried to get it made. But from the time that I was introduced in Boulevard Nights, it was 13 years until we made American Me. But pretty much Edward James Olmos was the one who directed it and produced it and co-wrote it. It was his baby. So he handpicked everybody that was in that film. He had auditions, but they were very, very relaxed. And we all just sit around a table and read the script together. And then he'd say, okay, switch parts. You so-and-so read this, so-and-so read that. It wasn't like we went in there one at a time. It wasn't like that. It was like table reading. It was really cool how we did it,
Did you
and it made
pref-
everybody feel so much more relaxed.
That's what I was about to ask you. Did you feel more comfortable in that type of relaxed environment?
Oh, much more comfortable. It took all the pressure off you
Okay.
because you were there with a group. You were all sitting around a table, and okay, now Danny, you read this part, and so you read that part, and we were all doing it together. So it was so much more. It was just so much more comfortable. I would say I could just sort of relax and let myself, go with it, go with the
Right.
flow. I didn't feel so nervous.
So by
like
this
like
time,
you often do at auditions. Often auditions can be grueling because
oh,
they're very nerve wracking.
I bet, man, being on the spot. So by this time, have your had your education on street gangs furthered, or was it kind of the same as in the
Oh,
before?
Boulevard Nights was like Street Gang 101 in college. It was unbelievable the education I got making that movie, and especially learning from the real gang members that we had in the movie to be there with me in the big VGV.
Yeah.
They were all real, real. They grew up that way. They lived that way. That was their life. And they taught me, they opened their hearts up to me and they took me in and just under their wing and taught me they shared their life experience with me so
Nice.
that I would be able to glean some reality and some honesty and some truth from what they were sharing with me and in hopes that it would end up on the screen. If it hadn't been for them, honestly, there's no way I think I could have played that part. There's no way. I needed their input in order to create what we ended up creating.
Right. Having those
But it was
advisors.
Boulevard Nights. It was that performance that stuck in Edward James Olmos's mind. And even though he and I had met the year prior, I'm sure he didn't remember because a friend of mine was in a play with him, and I went to go see her in the play, and he was in the play, and I didn't know him. I hadn't seen Zoot Suit yet. This is a year before Zoot Suit, and so I ended up meeting him through her, through going to see my friend. She was in the play with him.
Right. So my understanding is when they film a movie, I heard this recently that they don't film it from start to finish. They bounce around from the end to the front to the middle. Was that the same for American Me?
Yes.
Oof. Let me ask you real quick. Is that difficult to keep in your mind how you're going to change your emotions, your wording when you're jumping from time frames?
Well, in my script, I don't know how other actors do it, but I make a map, okay, like of the emotional arc of the character. And this map tells me this journey I'm going on. So no matter where you want me to go on, what scene you want to do, I'll go to that page and see the markings I have there for where I'm at that point in the story, and I'll know where I have to be.
Excellent.
It's just a matter of kind of keeping track of where you are emotionally from scene to scene and moment to moment. But it helps me a lot. Some actors probably don't need to do that, but I do. I need to make notes, and like it's almost like a chart that I follow.
No, that makes sense. That makes total sense, and that's a good way to do it. Personally, what were you thinking when you're like, man, my character of Puppet is going to choke out, uh, uh, fictional brother, Little Puppet, at the end of the scene? What went personally? Did you think it was extreme?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. When I read American Me and I finished the script, it was heavy. The script was heavy, just like you can imagine the movie, right?
Correct.
Because you're reading it and you're visualizing it, and I'm thinking, oh my god, I didn't have any idea how deep this was, right? And at the end of the script, because it was a long script, the script was longer than the movie ended up being. The script was even longer.
Wow.
Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, geez, no one is going to remember anybody in this movie when it's over except for JD, Mundo, and Santana. Those three people, and maybe Julie the girl, are the only ones that anyone's going to remember because there's so many damn characters spread out over so many years.
Wow.
But I thought to myself, except for there's this one supporting character. He's not the star, he's not the lead role, but he does something so heinous
Mm.
that if you can play this part with any level of reality and truthfulness, I know people will not forget you simply because of that act. And I was right. I was right.
I got chills,
That
man.
little, yeah, what he had to do to his brother. Because if you stop and think about it, Al Pacino did the same thing to his brother
Right.
in the Godfather
He did.
series. He didn't do it himself. That's the difference.
Right.
He called the shots, but he didn't perform the act himself.
Not
But I'll
only
tell you one thing, that's probably the hardest thing I've ever been asked to do in my career as an actor. I've never been asked to do anything as complex and challenging and just fucking difficult as that scene. That was, I just had no idea. How do you even act a scene like that? You're killing your own brother. It was mind boggling to me. It was absolutely mind boggling.
to say you knocked it out of the park would be not even,
Well, it's
you
not for me. That's not for me to say
oh, I'm
because
telling you.
that's for people who watch it to know if it was an experience for them. But for me, I was very disappointed because in my mind, I had an idea of the way I wanted that scene to go. I had an idea of the emotions I wanted to draw up out of myself in the course of doing that scene. But on that day we shot that scene, I don't know. I tightened up. I wasn't able to get to the place emotionally that I was so hoping and so planning on getting to. And I was very, very disappointed. I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed that when we were done, kind of toward the end of the day, I turned to Edward James Olmos and I said, Eddie, can we please come back and shoot this scene on another day? I'm just not feeling it today. I'm just not feeling it. And you know what he told me? He said, Danny, there's no way. There's no way we can come back and shoot this scene. We can't. It's too expensive. We have to move on. Don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. That's what he told me. And we ended up shooting the rest of the day. And I was very unhappy with my performance, very unhappy. And then to make matters worse, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Afterwards, after they processed the film and they looked at the scene, they liked the scene, okay? But you could hear the motor of the Aeroflex camera they were using to shoot the scene. I think it was a 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter. I'm not sure which. Aeroflex camera. And it made this little sound that almost sounded like a sprinkler, like through the whole scene. Over the dialogue, you could hear that. So they had to throw all of the dialogue that was recorded on the live and on the location. They had to throw it out, and I had to go back into a studio
Oh, wow.
where they're projecting the scene onto a screen in front of me with a microphone in front of me, and there's these little numbers that come up 3, 2, 1. It goes beep, beep, beep. And when you hear the third beep, you start to speak. You have to put your sound of your voice back into the mouth you're seeing on the screen
Wow.
with all the emotion. If you listen to the actual sound on location and you compare it to what I did in the studio, there's no comparison. The sound on location it's powerful. It's so evocative and it just blows you away. What I did in the studio, to me, it just doesn't even compare. But see, the audience doesn't can't never hear what we originally shot. So they've got nothing to compare it to. And when you combine what I did in the studio with the acting visually that you can see on the screen, people believed it. I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed that the scene worked as well as it did for an audience. But that just goes to show you the magic of movies.
Th-
Even when you fake it, people don't know.
Not just the magic of movies, but the actors and your skills, your passion, everything that you just said right now. Even when you mentioned that Santana you thought would stick out in the movie, JD
Oh,
and
all of them,
Mundo.
because their parts were so, they were the main focus of the story, the three of them, their
Right.
childhood when they're younger until their adult years and being in prison together and forming that organization to take care of themselves in there. And it was all about them,
So I was
which
a
is
kid.
fine.
I was a kid when that movie came out, and my father was a prison guard for California. And I remember
Oh,
watching
wow.
it. Yeah, and your part stood out, no less, because it's a traumatic thing, But we used to go around the neighborhood yelling, "Don't look at me, little puppet." and,
You know what's funny about that, Hector, is that I think it was about maybe a week or two, okay, after the film was in theaters, okay? It's
yeah,
it's still playing in theaters when I started to hear people say that line.
yeah,
And I was perplexed. I was bewildered because I didn't understand why is everybody locking on to that line? Because this is before the internet. This is
facts,
before social media. This
facts,
is before memes. This is
exactly.
before all that shit. And people were saying that line.
I w-
That's when I kind of had the idea, okay, they just they just really remember that scene. That was a memorable moment for people. Out of that whole 2 hour and 10-minute movie, that one scene stuck in people's minds.
And I was just about to say you were a meme before memes were a thing, man. My hats off to you. That's great. That's crazy. But
Yeah, I guess that's true.
not just that part. Another part that stood out to me is when Little Puppet got asked to stab that Nuestra Familia member, and
Yes.
you as a brother kept trying to take the mission. That part stood out to me too, like something a older brother would do.
Yes. And the key to making that character of puppet work, and this is what I realized early on, was that in order to make that scene at the end when I kill him as meaningful as it could possibly be, my job as an actor was I had to convince the audience that I loved my
Wow,
brother. I
wow,
had to. If the audience didn't believe that I loved him, they wouldn't give a you know what
wow.
if I strangled him. They wouldn't care. It wouldn't
Yeah,
be a big deal. It's the fact that they knew how close we were and how much I loved him. And I
facts.
only had a few scenes to create that. I only had a few moments here and there to build that. But somehow it worked out and people did believe it. They did
Yeah.
believe that he loved him. And even though he loved him, he sacrificed the one in order to save the others. Some people still don't get that. I get constantly asked, why did you kill your brother? I'm like, wow, it's all in there. When they show him the pictures when they show him the pictures, when Mundo goes to Puppet's cell and shows him the photographs from the wedding,
Yep.
the ones that Puppet is holding in his hand when little Puppet picks him up.
Right.
He's got those pictures. He's looking at them when they're in the car.
Yeah. No, I totally understood it. I got it.
Some people didn't get that. And some people don't get even, there's a lot of little details in American Me. You know, when the mother brings Santana the medal, the necklace,
Yeah.
and the guard takes it from her,
Right.
and then she tells him it's Dismas who
Yes.
was on the cross next to Jesus. Okay, that character isn't mentioned just for no reason at all. That character is symbolic.
Wow.
And if people stop and think about it, there's a very deep meaning to the fact that that character is mentioned, that person, that Dismas is mentioned, and that she gives him that. And then at the end, Julie ends up with it because he gives it to her.
Right. What was the significance behind that?
Well, the significance is, think about what happens to Santana. He goes through a complete transformation.
Right.
Okay. And look at what happens to Dismas. He goes through one too.
Okay. I got to read up on Dismiss.
Yes, read up on Dismas.
Okay.
Read up on Dismas.
What?
And I think that's why she gives him the medal. That's why she gives it to him, because there is a connection there between him and between this man.
Nice.
This man who was forgiven for his sins, and who changed, who realized what he had done at the end. He had achieved consciousness about himself, which is the same thing that happened to Santana. As soon as he came into consciousness, that's when they took him out.
Facts. Man. So to
You
this
can't
day,
manipulate. You can't manipulate somebody that has consciousness. You can't.
true.
There's no in that. And if you want to control them, manipulate them, whatever, you can't do that. So he had to go.
Right. He definitely had to go. And that movie right there, till this day, is probably the best depiction of the California Department of Corrections up until this point. With
Mm,
little discrepancies here and there, but we won't dive into those. But
yeah.
yeah, legitimately, that movie comes up all the time till this day, man. It's a huge fan favorite amongst
Well, as much of a downer as I think American Me is, because let's face it, it is not the feel good movie of the summer. You know what I mean? It's amazing to me how many men and women enjoy watching that movie over and over again. It just blows me away. It's like a ride,
Right.
and they just want to go on the ride. Let's go on the ride. Let's go on the ride again. They've been on the ride a million times, but let's
Yep.
do it again.
No, you're right. You're right.
There's
So
something about that they identify with those people in that story.
and it's really big in our Latino culture as well too. Like that, especially Southern California. California in
Yes.
general. Um, there's a lot to be said about California. People from California just move different, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I do. I having been all over the country, I have to agree with that.
Right. So, how are things doing now with you? Like, I know that we had this discussion right prior, I think a couple days ago, and we're like, man, we're looking at this world, and we're just like kind of shaking our heads, like, wow, things are off the hook right now in every aspect.
Yes. Yes, they are.
You think social media and or cell phones and or the internet played a role into that?
I think all of it did, really. But I also think it's destined to happen. It has to happen. It's almost like a purge, a
Oof.
purging that's going on now. And I think all of it plays a role in it, really.
Would you compare it to Rome?
I would. I would compare it to Rome, the great empire of Rome that once ruled practically the whole planet, and then one day it is no more.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that George Harrison song, "All things must pass." All
Right.
things must pass away. And right now we're going through a passing period. We're purging. It's crazy right now. It's absolutely crazy. But In a way, I feel very blessed to be alive at this particular time. It does seem like a very special and unique time to be living. It must be some kind of a, for me at least, I feel like almost like it's like a privilege to be alive at this time. Like maybe it was preordained. Like I planned it. I wanted to be here at this particular time to bear witness to what's going on at this moment in history.
Can you elaborate a little more on that? Like, is it's not that you enjoy observing it, but more so that you're having the opportunity to experience what's happening?
Yes, it's exactly that. That I have the opportunity to be here at a time that is so remarkable. It's so unbelievably remarkable, the time that we're living in, right? And you have to admit that it is. I'm only 66 years old, but the way the world has changed from the time I was born until the time right now, in those little that little period of time, 66 years, it's not very long.
Correct.
It's almost like I'm living on a completely different planet.
Correct,
Sometimes I
man.
wake up in the morning and I look around and I think, where the hell am I?
Yeah, I'm
Where
39.
where am I?
I agree with you, man. I'm an old soul, right? I always hung around older
Yeah,
people, and I always respect those that came before me. Something happened.
yeah.
So, there was a
No,
disconnect.
it's true. It's true. It is a crazy, crazy time. But at the same time, I wake up in the morning and think it's important for me to keep my head about me
Ooh,
and to keep my heart in the right place and to be grounded and
facts.
keep things real no matter how crazy it gets. I can't let it make me crazy. And we tried to do this earlier with the visual
Yeah, yeah.
aspect of it, you and me. And I had a little anxiety attack and it didn't go well. And you know I had promised you we were going to do this, and I really did want to do it, and I was looking forward to it. But somehow I just don't like to see myself when I'm talking about myself. Looking at me and talking about me at the same time, it's too much for me. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to do this way.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a problem when I can listen to a podcast or watch it. It doesn't matter to me. I don't
Right.
care. If I find it interesting, it's interesting, whether I'm hearing it or I'm watching it or both. So I'm hoping that other people will find this interesting as well, even though they don't get the chance to see me like they often do when they view podcasts.
No, I want to thank you for coming on here, sharing that part of your story. I know you're like, hey Hector, I get tired of answering the same questions, but hopefully they were not the same questions.
No, no, they're not, and it's just that you know there's so many things to talk about in this
Right.
world, but sometimes just talking about me it just seems like it's not the most interesting thing I could be doing with my time.
Can you tell us about the memorabilia you're selling right now and where they can find it? I actually picked up a big puppet and little puppet doll that I'm gonna put up back here.
Oh, did you get it already?
No, not yet. I probably got to go check my mail right now.
It's probably there. It's probably
Yeah.
either tomorrow, because I put it out the very next day, so it should be there soon. Well, what it is because of the and this is the only way to describe it, really. It's just the absolutely awesome love that people have for those movies and for those characters in those movies, and subsequently for the actors who created those characters. um i I am able to have a place. In this case, it's at Traders Village Flea Market in San Antonio, which is a very nice place, where I can have a shop and I can offer all this memorabilia related to these movies, to American Me, Boulevard Nights, Blood In, Blood Out, and all the other films that I did. Did a lot of other movies that weren't gangster films. I did a Western with Willie Nelson called Barbarossa, a political thriller called Cuba with Sean Connery, all these films I did in the past. And I can be there in this place that is my shop, right? And I can interact with all the fans who come there to see me. If they want to buy something, great. If they don't, that's fine too. We take pictures. I don't charge for the pictures. I sign autographs. They bring me their memorabilia that they have in their collection, and I sign it for a small fee, of course.
Right.
Some of the money that I use, I been able to make great donations to Homeboy Industries there in Los Angeles. Me and Little Puppet, we've raised thousands and thousands of dollars for them through our memorabilia sales and through our autograph signings and picture taking and all that. But it's just been a pleasure. The memorabilia is something that I know that if it wasn't for the love that people have for those movies, there wouldn't be a market for this kind of stuff, you know?
Facts.
But people do love those movies and they like to have a little something, you know, a little something autographed by, one of their favorite actors and one of their favorite movies. And so that's what I have to offer. If it's not a frame or if it's not bobbleheads, posters, t-shirts, whatever, I've got all kinds of stuff in my shop. Really nice stuff too. I really go out of my way to make things that are very high quality. Yeah, they're not cheap. They're not cheaply made and they're not cheap to buy,
Right, right.
but
No, they're
they'll
good
last
quality.
they'll last a long, long time. You're gonna see when you get that bobblehead and you open it up, you're gonna say I wasn't fooling around. It's a beautiful, beautiful bobblehead. And it features me and Little Puppet. And it's kind of funny too. I know you get the humor of it when you open it up, but it comes autographed by him and me,
Ooh,
and
nice.
that's a beautiful thing. You got to get both signatures on the base there, and it's a very, very high quality bobblehead made by Royal Baubles. They're a company that makes a lot of celebrity bobbleheads, and they're located in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Man, I feel like a little
So
kid on
yeah, no, I love my
Christmas.
shop. I love my shop, and I love being able to interact with the fans. I love the fans, man. I'm to me, my fans are some of the greatest fans that an actor could ever dream of having, ever. It's amazing the things that people write to me and say to me, and how they're just so happy. If I can make a person, you know feel a little bit of joy in this crazy freaking mixed up world that you referred to earlier,
Right.
just make put a smile on somebody's face, I consider my job to be done at that point, really. Because
Awesome.
that's what I'm doing it for. It's not really for the money. None of us are going to take it with us when we go,
Facts.
but I will take with me the fabulous memories and the love that all these people have shown me over all these years for stuff that I did. What Boulevard Nights can be 45 in March. Imagine
Man,
something you did 45 years ago still reverberates and resonates with people 4.5 decades later. It's insane. It's crazy. If you had asked me 45 years ago if I thought that Boulevard Nights would still be around in the year 2023, I would have I would have said, hell no. We didn't even
awesome.
have the internet back then.
It's definitely alive and kicking, man. I think people hold on to the good old days. And
I think so too. And especially the things that they experienced when they in their childhood or things they grew up with,
right,
you know, because as you get older, okay, let's say you see American Me when you're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. Okay, that's one thing. But when you're 23 and you watch it again, it's not going to be the same movie.
correct.
And when you're 33 and 43 and 53, that movie's going to keep changing with you as you keep changing. And as you mature, you'll see it through different eyes.
Facts.
And that's a beautiful thing, I think. It's not like it's a fixed thing for all your life. No. As you change, that movie's going to change too.
And
It's
that
going to
reminds
change.
Danny, that reminds me of the saying that goes, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, for it is not the same river and it is not the same man."
There you go. That's absolutely true. That river is always in a constant state of change, in
Well,
constant flow.
I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day, man, sharing your experience, your story. I truly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart for allowing us to capture this moment in time, Danny. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your interest and for your support, and thank everybody out there. I got to thank everybody out there just for the
Definitely.
love that they showed me over all these years because dude, it's better than an Academy Award. I think those awards and stuff are great and they're wonderful and people appreciate them, and I know I would too if I had one. But I think what I've received over the course of my life, not just for one year, but for my whole career, to me has been so valuable. The love of not just my community but people all over the world who love these films and who want to express to you how much they love them. People want to tell me when they see me, let me tell you what this movie means to me, and I stand there and listen to them because that's real to me. They don't have to do that. They don't have to tell me that they love this movie or that they love my performance in it. There's nobody making them do that. They're doing it of their own volition because that's how they really, really feel. And it
Correct.
really touches me. It really does. So thank
Yeah.
you for inviting me on your show. And I wish you nothing but good fortune and good luck with your show in the future.
Thank you, sir. And we will definitely keep in touch, man. I will call you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Alrighty. Bye.
Take care.